Hey folks, welcome back to Welcome to My World. It's Dominique here with you, and this is the time that I came up with that I have actually available to me to answer some of your viewer and listener questions. Okay, so I've tried to kind of line these all up according to subject. We got a lot of questions about a couple of recent episodes from folks like you who are viewing me on YouTube or listening in here on Spreaker or YouTube or both. And I'd like to answer some of these questions. First of all, I appreciate the comments. I'm not really going to address comments right now, more questions than anything, because I want to try to keep this brief. We all know how that goes when it comes to me, but we'll try to keep this brief. So I want to thank you for all of the positive comments that you have written in with and commented and sent to me privately about both the spiritual bypassing and the story that I shared with you about a scary interaction I had with a local police officer. So I really want to thank you for your support. I was sitting there waiting to be just lambasted and told that only blue lives matter and how dare I question authority and what have you, when really I'm not questioning anything. I was kind of an innocent bystander in that particular instance. So, but I'm really pleasantly surprised, my friends. Thank you so much for being so kind and just for truly listening to what I had to say and for commenting on it respectfully, for sharing it, for getting it out there. I really appreciate you, and I thank you for your supportive comments and for thanking me. While I really appreciate you thanking me for putting my story out there and sharing it, I feel like I had to do it. I feel like I dropped the ball with the cop situation. Like I said, I should have followed up in an even more proactive way. I feel like I really dropped the ball on that. And so I think this is partially my way of making up for that. And I just thank you for your positive regard and your positive feedback and for keeping it real with me. I really appreciate that. So I also thank you for all of your wise and intelligent, respectful comments about the spiritual bypassing episode that we did recently. I actually had a couple of folks step up and say, wow, I think I might be guilty of this. I think I might be guilty of this. And that takes a lot of courage to say. And I just am floored by your courage and you just being such an awesome person that you would not only step up and own that and own it, some of you publicly, but that you would strive for change, for personal change. Again, I was just blown away by the reception that episode got, because I, again, was waiting to be, as I have been in the past, now and again, I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was waiting to be targeted. I was waiting to be told, no, you're race baiting, whatever that means. You're being sensitive or what have you, when it's really a scientifically reviewed and widely written about subject that has nothing to do with race baiting or anything but science and sociology and psychology. So again, I'm just very pleasantly surprised that folks didn't say, oh, you're making that up or something, that they came out and that they said, wow, either I've experienced this or I've been a part of this. I'm looking to change. I'm looking to steer my ship in a more positive direction. And again, I'm so thankful for you. I'm so blown away by the response. And correspondingly, of course, this couple of episodes, the two that I just referenced, the one about spiritual bypassing and then the one about my experience with that rogue police officer, if you will, are the ones that I got the most questions about. Now, for those of you who are waiting to hear your exact question read on air, I may do that in a couple of cases where I just got like one question or one question that was most representative of, what a couple of people wrote in about or were trying to ask or were trying to say. Then, yeah, I'll read your actual question. But some of you wrote in about the same subject or had basically the same question, and so I sort of paraphrased an amalgamation or a conglomeration of various questions that you folks have asked and just threw that together in a short sentence form so that I could kind of answer all of your questions without being too repetitive on this Q&A show. And I noticed that in the past my Q&A videos, my Q&A shows have been extremely popular. Instead of a dozen listeners or 100 listeners, we get thousands. We get lots of engagement, lots of questions, lots of respectful discussion. So I figured I would set my mind and my actions toward working on getting some more Q&A style shows out there. Okay, so the first topic, diving right in, the first topic that I got questions on was, and by the way, I actually got less questions on spiritual bypassing. So yes, this is the first topic that I got questions on that I'm going to address, and I kind of just split them all up into different topics, but actually I got more volume and less diverse questions about the cop episode. Okay, so don't think that just because I'm only going to read you a few questions from viewers about the cop episode that I didn't get a lot of them. I did, and I'm definitely trying to answer your question. So I'm not going to read just your specific question necessarily on air, like I said, because I got so many of the same questions, just worded differently about that topic. And then with regard to spiritual bypassing, I got a few questions that were, just individual sort of questions, and the same people didn't tend to write in too much or speak to me too much about having the same questions. So I feel like there's kind of a quality issue here, and I'm just trying to be as concise as possible with this without constantly repeating various questions and repeating the same answers to those questions that were asked by different people, right? Doesn't matter who asked the question, the answer is going to be the same. So, again, moving right along, the most interesting question, and really one of the most frequently asked questions that I got about spiritual bypassing that actually more than one person did ask was, simply, am I spiritually bypassing? Well, I would love to say, no, you're definitely not. You're fine. You're absolved. Go home and say 20 Hail Dominiques and you'll be fine. But I can't, because I don't know you and I don't know your situation. I can't say that. My best answer and or sort of advice to you on that subject would be something along the lines of, if you have asked the question, it's very possible that you think you might be involved with spiritual bypassing, right? So if you're asking the question, it may be that you're coming from a place of guilt, which, don't feel guilty, just acknowledge that this may be happening. Examine the facts, look at the facts, look at your actions, look at your thoughts, look at your words, and just go from there. And also look at any groups or churches or synagogues or temples or what have you that you may be a part of, and just kind of see what the vibe is there and how well you mesh with that vibe, and vice versa. So that's really the best way that I can answer that question, and in fact help you answer that question for yourself. So that is the best way to go about finding that out for yourself. I wish I could tell you. If you do want to write in, a couple of you folks who wrote in with that question, if you do want to write in and give me some context, I'd be happy to tell you my opinion, but it's not my opinion that counts. It's your opinion that counts. And, it is your loved ones and your community's opinion that counts too, in that if folks are, choosing to distance themselves from you or are bringing this subject up with you, that perhaps you may want to consider whether this is something you're engaging in and use the criteria I just gave you for that. And just kind of check in with your heart and check in with your mind. Check in with your higher self, if you will. And that is the best possible way that you can get like a foolproof answer as to whether or not you're engaging in spiritually bypassing. And in fact, I think that some of you meant to word it correctly, but it's just FYI, it's not called spiritually bypassing, it's called spiritual bypassing. Perhaps you meant to write, am I engaging in bypassing spiritually? But just for the sake of using correct terminology, if that matters to you, and if it doesn't, don't worry. I'm not the grammar police, except when I am on Facebook. Some of you are going, sure you're not. So I'm just being real with you. If you're looking for the correct term, it is spiritual bypassing, not spiritually bypassing. Okay. And again, as I've mentioned before, I think if you are concerned that any organization you're a part of is engaged in spiritual bypassing, that's something that you can address. And there's a question along those lines further on, so I'm not going to say too much more on that. But also, if you're looking for a place that's more kind of open and more aware for the most part, check out a UU church. I tend to like the various UU churches I've been to. I'm not a member at one specifically, but I just find them to be very honest, very positive in a real way and in a genuine way. Okay, so I hope that helps you if you're feeling like you need to look elsewhere and find another group that you resonate with and which resonates better with you than the one that you're currently in. And of course, there is no law saying that you have to just go to one church or one synagogue or one temple or what have you. Go to different groups, go to different events, different venues, and again, just see what resonates with you and see if you resonate with those particular events, venues, or churches or synagogues or temples or groups. So along the same lines here, the next question that I've gotten from, I believe, just one person, and it is kind of one of those questions that's very tough for me to answer, just as the previous question, am I spiritually bypassing, was tough for me to answer. This one is too, without context. So again, I say, feel free to write in with some further context if you would like to. You don't have to, but if you want to give me some context, that's up to you. I'm happy to listen. I'm happy to give you my thoughts on the matter here on the show. And so this question happens to be, am I racist? So yeah, it's really hard to say without knowing you. The one answer I can give you that you might not like is, yes, we're all racist. We're all racist against somebody. All ethnicities, all backgrounds, all nationalities, all genders, all sexes are in some way prejudiced against others. It's a fact of life. The way that you can turn that into a sort of a positive solution is by acknowledging what your biases are and actively working to educate yourself about why they are that and about what you can do to move past that, right? what you can do to move past your personal biases. And, even helping to enlighten other people and educate other people as far as how they might move past their own biases might be helpful in that regard. If you're asking, am I racist because I engage in spiritual bypassing, I would say not necessarily, but okay. I want to be careful how I word this, and I also want to be very clear and concise, so give me a moment here. Okay. So, you're not necessarily racist because you're engaging in spiritual bypassing. There is that sort of flying monkey phenomenon that, you're sort of inadvertently being caught up in this web of gaslighting, and that the group you hang with or belong to, religiously or spiritually speaking or socially, engages in. So you may be being caught up as sort of an inadvertent support personality, but it is your job to work that out and decide if you are, and make choices that allow you to say no more and to step out of that in a healthy way with harm to none, without harming yourself or anyone else. And I really do happen to believe that both racism and spiritual bypassing are harmful. It is a fact. It's not just my belief. It's also a fact. Psychologically, sociologically, and scientifically. And so, again, I'm not telling you that you are a bad person or trying to answer that question in context, because I don't have context. But, like I say, we're all racist or bigoted in some way or another, or prejudiced in some way or another against somebody, all right? And especially against people that aren't like us, which is sort of the root of that term. That's really what racism and bigotry and prejudice are all about. And so we all can improve in that regard, for sure. And like I say, if you're asking because you think that you're engaged in spiritual bypassing, whether that could be a racist modality, if you will, it can be. But again, if you're caught up in it, either inadvertently or otherwise, it's your job to extricate yourself. And if you feel that you can safely do so, it's also your job to respectfully and lovingly and kindly educate the people around you about what's going on, and how they might work through that, and what other options regarding behavior and word and thought that they might have. I mean, they might not be armed with that information. So if you feel safe and comfortable and that it would be appropriate for you contextually to educate the people around you, I say do that. But always look out for your own safety. Sadly, spiritual bypassing can lend itself to and be a tool that's used by cluster B personality disordered individuals. So you don't want to come up against a narcissist or a sociopath or a willing flying monkey, a willing support personality, and say, hey, let me educate you on this, because they don't care. They are using this tactic for a reason. They are purposely gaslighting people, and you don't need to be a part of that, and you don't need to draw attention to yourself or make yourself a further target. So use your own judgment there. But certainly educate yourself if you feel comfortable sharing, on social media or person to person, any information you get on the matter. Great, go for it. I say that putting information out there is always a good thing, respectfully and kindly. Use that loving kindness in practice. Don't be calling people out in order to feel better than them. Definitely don't be, belittling other people to make yourself feel higher up, because that in effect is spiritual bypassing on another level, on a more covert level. So make sure that you're not engaging in that yourself, and that it's not about your egotism, right? So I hope that kind of gives you a comprehensive answer to that question. Am I racist? The next question that somebody asked me, and I believe this was asked just by one individual, was, do atheists spiritual bypass? Is that possible? Well, oh yeah, of course it is. It's possible even outside of spirituality, even outside of religion, even outside of belief. It is possible to bypass. So yes, absolutely. Now, I'm not suggesting that all atheists are doing this all the time or what have you, but, there can be an element of dogma to atheism that lends itself to misinterpretation of facts and data and science and drawing conclusions that fit their personal beliefs rather than looking at things objectively, right? Which is something that we all do. We all have that confirmation bias. But I think that those of us who acknowledge it and actively work around it, against it even, are better off. So I don't know if you're an atheist or if you're asking just out of curiosity or if you know folks who are. But I'm by no means going to suggest that atheism in and of itself lends itself to spiritual bypassing. That's certainly not the case. Atheism is not a religion. It can be a dogmatic belief. It is a system of belief, but it is not a religion. So and it's not a spiritual modality. So I hope that sort of answers that question for you. It's a very interesting question. So right under that one, we've had a couple of people ask this one. Can a Christian be a part of spiritual bypassing? Well, yeah, absolutely. If you listen to my show, I think I kind of laid that one out pretty well. Religion and spiritual belief itself really lends itself quite seamlessly, unfortunately, to spiritual bypassing. It's attractive for human beings to feel that they need somebody to look down upon. It's attractive for human beings to have to feel that they've surpassed someone else or another group or set of a couple of groups of people on their way to enlightenment, which is totally silly and ridiculous. Nobody is enlightened. That's absolutely absurd. That's not a thing that happens. So yeah, any religion, any spiritual belief is very, very, very likely to be full of spiritual bypassing. Now, I'm not suggesting that there aren't groups, churches, synagogues, temples, what have you out there that actively work against spiritual bypassing or that don't engage in it. There absolutely are. And if you are a person of belief, go find one of those groups, one of those temples, one of those synagogues, or one of those churches, right? They're out there. Go do your homework, go find one. But yes, Christians can absolutely be involved with spiritual bypassing. Good question. Next question is, what if my religion just believes in positivity and that negativity is bad? Now, I don't know any religions per se that believe that. I could be coming up short on information, and if you do know of one or a few, please feel free to let me know. Offhand, I really can't think of any that that's like a tenet or a main pillar of their belief system. But I do know that law of attraction, unfortunately, is becoming much more not that it ever wasn't dogmatic, but it's becoming much more prevalent, much more easily broken down and digested by folks, because it's so widely spread and so widely dissected and regurgitated by different people who are looking to capitalize on that ideology and on, selling people a bill of goods, essentially. I'm not gonna mince words about that. It's a bill of goods. It's ridiculous. And so that's really the sort of belief system, not religion, but belief system that comes to mind, that springs to mind for me, along with, in some ways, Buddhism, although I think the sort of positive far outweighs the negative with Buddhism. But yeah, Buddhism, I guess, maybe, and definitely law of attraction are two modalities or systems of belief, not necessarily that they're both religions, but they're systems of belief that sort of, really lift up positivity over negativity. And so I'm not quite sure what your question is when you say, what if that's the case? I mean, yeah, that is the case for different systems of belief. We know that to be true. I'm thinking that you might be asking, what do I do if that's the case? If I know that this is true, what do I do? If this is, a religion or a state of belief that I'm in, or a group that I'm in, what do I do? So I would say, again, that you educate yourself about potentially other groups, other temples, other churches, other synagogues that are part of your religion or your set of beliefs that don't engage in that. And if you can't find any, it may be that your system of belief is a bit problematic, and it may be time to really look inward and just see if that resonates with you. People grow and change, and something that resonated with you, say, a year ago, 6 months ago, a decade ago, might not resonate with you today, might not resonate with you 10 years down the road, right? So don't blame yourself if that's where you're going with it. Don't blame yourself. Next question is, this makes me kind of sad. Am I wrong for wanting to be happy? Oh my gosh. And this question I broke down into two parts. Okay, so part one is, am I wrong for wanting to be happy? Well, first of all, I would say, I think that the word you're looking for is content. So you're not it's not a reasonable thing to expect to live life in a way where you're always happy, but it's definitely possible to most of the time be content, right? I mean, that's a possibility, and that's more of a sort of an even-keeled goal to shoot for, rather than I'm going to be happy all the time. That would be a bit unbalanced, right? So rather than striving for constant happiness, look for most of the time contentedness rather. I don't know if contentment is even a word. It's 12:26 a.m. Give me a break, okay? But look for intermittent contentedness. We'll put it that way. In life, okay, we have to deal with things that feel good, that feel bad, that feel anywhere in between, that feel scary, that feel happy, but the feelings themselves are not inherently good or bad or something to strive for. If you're striving for anything, my friend, strive for being genuine and being authentic and experiencing your emotions in your life in a way that's authentic. Not shoving things down, not berating yourself or congratulating yourself when no beratement and no congratulation is necessary, right? So just be authentic. Just be. The same question, part 2 of that question is, am I wrong for wanting positivity? Again, now this is a little bit different. That's why I am answering both parts of this question. So I guess it depends on what positivity means to you. Does it mean constant state of happy clappiness and pretending that problems don't exist and not wanting to acknowledge what actually goes on in shared reality? If so, then yes, that is wrong. It's not appropriate, at least. It's not appropriate. It's not balanced. It's not a reasonable expectation to hold, shall we say. But if you're talking about just striving for and wanting a state of reasonable content, then no, it's not wrong. And try to move away from looking at things as just inherently right, inherently wrong, inherently good, inherently bad, positive, negative. I mean, things just are, Things just are. So nobody's going to tell you, oh man, you are so wrong for thinking that, or rather you're so wrong for wanting that. Nobody's going to come out, and thankfully we don't yet have the thought police, right? So we're not living in an Orwell novel. Nobody's going to come out of the woodwork and say, stop wanting that, stop thinking that. But if your thoughts, if your feelings aren't sitting well with you, it's possible that you need to evaluate whether or not they're genuine. So being genuine, and again, striving for a reasonable level of content, of contentedness, of contentment is totally reasonable and is a great goal to shoot for. And just letting go of self-judgment while still embracing fact, shared reality, logic, and reason is really, really important in that journey toward wellness, toward contentedness, right? Now, the next question is, by only focusing on positivity, am I ignoring something important? Doesn't stuff that needs to be attracted to me just come to me anyways? Well, I think because the way that you worded this question leads me to believe that you already know the answer to it, and that you're looking for somebody either to back you up or to say, no, you're wrong. It's totally fine to only focus on positivity. And I'm not going to be that person to say it's totally fine to only focus on quote unquote positivity, because it's not. It's not. Yes, you are essentially ignoring something important by only focusing on positivity. And I'm sorry, but no, science does not back up the erroneous concept drifting around out there in the ether that stuff that needs, I don't think that's a thing either, that needs to be attracted to you just comes to you anyway. I don't think anything needs to be attracted to anybody or, taken away from anybody. I don't think that anybody is in a state of constantly deserving, better things. I mean, that's just not, that's not genuine and authentic and in line with reality, right? So, yes, I would say that by focusing only on sort of obsessive or unhealthy or unbalanced level of positivity, that yes, you are in fact ignoring something important, and that I believe, again, that because you worded the question the way that you did, you know this already. And I'm not berating you. I'm simply trying to answer this question in the most expedient way possible and with no room for misinterpretation. Because I think that oftentimes our confirmation bias will sort of act up and say, oh, that's not what she meant. She meant that you should live in a delusional bubble your entire life and that's just fine. Nope, not what I'm saying. So just trying to clarify and be real and make sure that my actual answer gets across, right? Now, moving on to the next question. Got a couple more here.